This is part 2 of building a forum with Rails 5 and material design. Just have a couple of quick things before we get started. First of all, I'd love it if everyone would go over to techmaker.tv and register for my email list. I'm working on some content right now to help you with your career, find a job, find some freelancing gigs, that sort of thing. So if you want to get that, plus get the episodes emailed out to you every week, please jump over here and register. If you're on the list already and you haven't gotten anything yet, don't worry, stuff's coming. We had to take a little bit of a break for a little while, and we're back, and we should be sending some stuff out starting next Monday. Alright, so I think that was actually the only thing I had to talk about, so let's just dive in and get started. So let's open up MaterializeCSS, and we need to add in some navigation. So if we go over here to Components, and we scroll down to Navbar, to start, I'm just going to grab one of these. Let's see. I think I want this fixed navbar. So we'll just copy that. Let's jump back to the code. And we'll open up our application HTML layout file. So in here, just inside the body tag, we're just going to paste that. And let's just go see what that looks like. Cool, so we have a pink navbar. There are a number of ways you can work with color in material design and in MaterializeCSS. To start, I'm just going to use this basic thing where you can just throw the name of the color you want in. So let's just go down. I'm just going to get black. So you can just actually type black, I think. And we can go up in here into our navbar fixed and just say black. And that should make the navbar black for us. Nope. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Background color. Maybe it needs to go in the nav. There we go. But now that I see that, that's really not my favorite. So let's just go grab a different color, maybe blue. I think like this is going to turn out looking like Google Maps or something. But if we just grab a standard blue, just put that in here and see what that looks like. You can obviously pick what you want. That's a little bit bright, but okay, well that gives us kind of a starting point. So maybe you can also see how the darken and lighten classes work. So we can just say like darken 2 and see what this does. It probably is going to tone it down. So that's one really cool thing about the material stuff is you can get a color and you can just kind of tweak it with classes inline. It's pretty cool. The next thing I want to fix is the spacing. So we have this container in the middle of the page, which is getting everything nice and central. And then we have in the navbar, it's not contained at all. So I think, so I'm not super familiar with the MaterializeCSS yet. It's something I've just started working with recently, so bear with me. But I believe what we can do is in the navbar itself, we can say container and kick that up in there. And that should pop everything in. But nope, not exactly. Maybe the container needs to go inside of the nav wrapper. I think that makes sense. Okay, let's see where we are. So we have the nav wrapper, container. So we have div nav, and then up here we have div nav. Let's see what that does. Okay, that is what we wanted. So the reason I kind of inferred that is because blue is defining the color for the whole navbar, so you can tell that the entire navbar is still at this level, and then you have nav wrapper, and then the stuff that we actually want to contain is inside there. So it makes sense that we would just wrap the stuff that we want to contain in the container. So this content obviously isn't relevant to us, but the only thing I'm really going to change right now is just make this forum, and then we'll say, actually let me do this. So this is kind of the Rails way to do this. We'll say link to forum root path, which is the slash or home page basically, and then we'll say class brand logo. Alright, so now if we click this, it gets us home. So now if we go anywhere, we go in here and we edit, same thing everywhere. Okay, cool, so now we can navigate a little bit. There was something cool I saw over here on the navigation that I wanted to think about adding. Right here, so add an active class to your li tags to denote the current page. We'll worry about that later once we have more pages. Right now we don't really have enough to mess with that. Alright, anyway, let's keep going. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is set up authentication with Twitter. To do that, you need to go to apps.twitter.com, and if you don't have a Twitter account, you're probably going to need to create one. Anyway, so I'm logged into my account, which I'm TechMakerTV on Twitter if you want to follow me. Anyway, so I don't have any apps. I'm going to create a new one, and let's just go through this process. So I'm going to call this the Polar Bear Forum. It is a Rails 5 demo application. You have to put a website. I'm just going to put techmaker.tv because I don't really want to put this up anywhere. So this is the important point right here. So we're going to put HTTP localhost, that's too many L's, host 3000/auth/Twitter/callback. So click yes, you've read it and agree to the terms, and create your application. So for now, I'm not going to go over here because there's some like private keys and stuff in here, and I don't want you guys trying to do crazy stuff with all of that info. But anyway, you're going to click on keys and access tokens, and you're going to need those in a few minutes. Obviously you can see my consumer key, but there's a secret key too also over there that you're going to need. So the next thing I want to do in the spirit of dealing with that is there's a gem called Figaro that we're going to use. Say like that. So if you go over here to this page, it'll tell you how to install it. I'm pretty familiar with this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But we need to open up our gem file. Down here at the bottom under Materialize, we'll just say gem Figaro. If you stop the server and then you bundle install, and then you'll say, once that installs, you'll say Figaro install. And what that's going to do is it's going to set up a couple of files for you which we can use to store environment variables. So an environment variable is basically a way to store data that you don't want to be listed in your code base. I'm sure there's other uses for it, but that's kind of in standard Rails development, that's the context you see it the most is I have something like a secret API key. I don't want to put it in my code base because I don't want to push it to GitHub. So we use environment variables to basically hide that information. So if we go back to our code, I'm going to close all this stuff down because I don't need it right now. We'll open up that file that it created, application.yml, which lives in the config directory if you need to look it up manually. And they basically tell you exactly what to do. So let's actually take a slight detour and jump over to the browser and look at the OmniAuth Twitter app, which is what we're going to be using here. So if you head over to this GitHub page and scroll down, we'll go through the installation in a moment, but we need an API key and an API secret. So back in our back in our application.yml, we'll say Twitter API key, and you're going to punch in whatever your API key is. I'm going to copy and paste mine in a minute. It is not LKS, JDFL, blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to type in Twitter secret key, and same thing. So you want to get your Twitter secret key from that page in Twitter, in the apps page that we did not quite look at earlier. Alright, just to be hyper clear, go back to Twitter, click on this link, take the information that's there, and put it in that file that I just had up. Alright, now that that's done, let's get this working. So the first thing that we need to do is actually add gems to our gem file. So if we open up our gem file, and then we jump down here, we're going to say gem OmniAuth, and then we're going to say gem OmniAuth Twitter. So OmniAuth Twitter is what's known as an OmniAuth strategy. So you can use OmniAuth to log in to basically anything. It just implements the OAuth protocol. So what we're going to do is now we're going to bundle install. Cool. Alright, so now we're just going to follow the instructions back over here, and we will see where that gets us. So we need to create an OmniAuth initializer, and we're going to put this code in it. Okay, so back in our code, let's close this. So in config, there's an initializers folder, and all of these initializers get ran when your application starts. So what that means is anytime you change anything in here, you have to restart your server. So we'll say omniauth.rb, and you can name this whatever you want. Like we might actually call this twitter.rb. I don't think it matters. But anyway, we'll paste in this, and then right here where this is saying API key, really we have to change this. So in order to access those variables that you created, right, you created them already, right, we say env, and then you need to say Twitter API key, or whatever you called it. You can call them whatever you want, as long as you're consistent everywhere. And then I called mine Twitter secret key. Okay, so let's pause for a second and let's just see what we've actually managed to do so far. So if we start the server, there's a little bit of this process that can seem a little bit magical, and I'm going to try my best to explain it. So what the OmniAuth gem does for us is it automatically sets up a kind of route. So we haven't written any routes. Let's actually look at our routes folder just to remind ourselves. So we haven't written any routes other than our discussions related stuff. So if I go to /auth/Twitter, this is going to take me to Twitter. So it's going to take me to Twitter. You can see my OAuth token up here, and it's asking me if I want to authorize the app. Now, we haven't set anything up to handle this, but let's go ahead and click this and let's see what happens. So if I authorize this, it's going to say, oh, redirecting you back, and it's going to say no route matches get auth Twitter callback. So you should recognize that as the route that we wrote localhost :3000 auth Twitter callback when we set our account on Twitter. So, and you also see there's some extra information up here with my token and stuff. So what this token is used for is I can save this for a given user, and then I can use that to access information on their account later. It's giving me permission to go back and get information after the fact. So we'll deal with all of that later. For now, I want to show you, if I try to go to auth Twitter again, it's going to go to Twitter and say, yep, you've already authorized, and it's just going to kick me back. So if I go to Twitter and I look in, so let's just go to Twitter and I look at my account, maybe, where is it? Settings and privacy, Alright, so if I were to go down and click on apps, let's see. Now you can see that Polar Bear Forum is now listed as one of my apps I have access to. And I can choose to revoke access or not. I'm not going to do it. If you're testing your setup, sometimes you have to come in and revoke access over and over while you're just testing things out. It sends back the data regardless, so I'm not going to worry about it. You can see here that I don't think it's the same token, but it sends back an OAuth token and a verifier and all that stuff every time we hit that endpoint. So anyway, let's keep going. Okay, so if we look back at the OmniAuth Twitter gem, if we scroll down, you'll see this authentication hash, which is what we're going to be caring about. And it's telling you it's available in request.env OmniAuth auth, and that's really useful if you already know what the request is and kind of know how to inspect this stuff, but I suspect that some of you might not, so let's dig into that a bit. So the first thing I want to do is just say, in here I'm going to define a route, and I'm going to say get auth :provider callback to sessions new. Okay, so there's a small amount of information required here for you. You're probably wondering, what the heck is this provider thing? Anytime you're dealing with a route, and this is true in multiple frameworks, not just Rails, I think this is very similar in Phoenix with Elixir. Sometimes you need to have a variable in the route. So for example, you might have like blog posts / ID, or you can call this whatever, you can call it name. And then if you had somebody comes to visit, like, you know, yourblog.com /blog posts / hello world, then it's going to say, okay, this hello world is now in a variable, which in your controller you can access like params name. Alright, so we're going to delete all this because none of this code makes any sense in this location, and I'm going to delete that too. But anyway, so provider is basically a variable, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so we just are implying that we have a sessions controller now. And if any of this is confusing, go back and check out the Building a Blog course, and that may help sort some of this out. So let's set up a sessions controller.rb. We'll say class sessions controller. We need to inherit from application controller. And in here, we're just going to define new. Alright, so this should get rid of this error and probably show us a different one. So let's just ping this and see what happens. So it's going to redirect us to sessions.new probably, and it's probably going to tell us it doesn't know. That's really slow. What is happening here? Okay, so it's exactly what I said. It's a different error, and it's just telling us there's no template. So we'll cross that bridge later. For now, let's go back to the gem file. I want to make sure that I've got something, and I don't. So in this group development test, I'm going to add a gem called pry_rails. I think you can use bybug for this too, but I just like pry better. So we're going to stop our server bundle install. Oh, misspelled install. Alright, so now let's run our server again. Back in our sessions controller. I think I may have gone through a bit of this in the previous course, so again, like, you may or may not be familiar with this depending if you look at the blog course. But we can throw this thing in here called binding.pry, which is amazing. And what this is going to do is, I'm just going to refresh this, and let's just go back to our terminal. Well, oh, I can't refresh that page. I need to revisit auth/Twitter. Okay, that makes more sense. So this is actually going to hang right here. And now I'm in this new action on the sessions controller that we just created. So if you've never done this, this is kind of fun. You'll feel like a hacker for a little while. Hit request and just hit enter, and it's going to show you like all sorts of stuff. So you can use this to do all sorts of interesting things. We're not going to get into it because we have a specific mission, which is to look at this request.env OmniAuth auth. So if we look at, let's start by just doing request.env and seeing what that is. So that's a lot of stuff. And again, you can look through it. So I just wanted to kind of highlight how much information is on this request object, and it's worth taking some time and kind of like poking around. So anyway, let's get to the point, which is they're telling us that because of the OmniAuth gem, we have this OmniAuth auth key in here. So now that we've looked at that, that will tell us all the information we want to know about the user. So that's going to be kind of coming up on the end of this particular lesson, but I want you to take some time and poke around in here. So for example, you could say something like, let's actually do this. Let's say user, now that we know that that's there, we can say user info equals request.env OmniAuth.auth. Okay, so now that we have that, to get out of pry, I think you saw me do it, you can just type quit. And to get back to it, we can just go back to this page. So if we go Twitter, now we should be able to say, well, it's going to take us a second. What is happening? It's just going slow. Okay, so now we can say user info, and we have that in a variable, and we can see, you can see, actually, one quick thing, sorry, sidetrack here. I made that comment about the provider, so you can see here in the params, you can access the provider, and that came in via the URL. So we can say that's something we probably want to store, is like who they logged in with. So anyway, we can look at the user info. We can get basically all the basic Twitter information off of here. You know, nickname, name, location, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do in the next episode is set up a user model, and we are going to capture all of this information, save it in the database, and then log the user in. So that will be the next episode, and then the episode after that, we're going to start restricting what the user has access to. So anyway, that should be the next couple of episodes, and you should get a really good idea of how to build out, log in, and control access to things. So looking forward to it. If you like this, subscribe to my channel, like the video. I really appreciate it. It helps me out. Helps me stay motivated to keep giving you great content, so do that. Check out the email list. Like I said, there's going to be some career-oriented stuff coming out next week. Looking forward to talking to you next time. Later.